All right, Jen, I thought we could start with introductions of everybody online. I'm attempting to share the screen there.
Great, thank you so much. So far I've tracked 4 attendees and 2 board members joining us virtually. I believe we have Kai online. Kai, are you online? I see. There we go.
He's here.
Do you mean Chai?
Oh, Chai, I'm so sorry. I was mispronouncing it. I apologize.
It's okay. Hi, I'm Chai Sei Chow. I'm I guess a consumer. I live over here in Aloha, Oregon.
Welcome. And Jesse?
Hi. Hi, I'm Jessie Dillon. I'm a customer.
And we have June joining. June, are you still with us? June was attempting to get her audio connection converted over to video as well, so she might be working on that. And then Todd is joining online as well. Todd Spite.
Hi, Todd Spate from Washington County Community Action.
Welcome, Todd. And then we have Commissioners Duggan and Fisher, if I'm tracking correctly.
Yes, Commissioner Duggan present.
Welcome. And I do see that we have some additional community members joining as just members of the general public. And so we will call on them at the time of public comment.
Thanks, Jenna. And then if we take a moment around the room, my name is Libby Baki with Consor, and we are helping the district with the RAC committee. And
yeah, I'm Tammy Makery with Consort Club.
I'm Katie Wilson with Consort as well.
right, and we'll go around the room.
I'm Daryl Monalong, one of the RAC members, but also a customer.
Yeah.
Zach Lindahl, one of the RAC members and with the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, and I do public policy, government affairs.
I am Trisha Postma. I am the customer service and billing supervisor here at Tualatin Valley Water.
Steve Marks, RAC member, community member.
Chris Brown, RAC committee member and customer.
You?
Maddie Hyde, RAC member and
And I'm Paul Matthews, CFO and a customer and a neighbor of Mr. Marks.
Samantha Rico, RAC member and customer.
Kyle Walker, RAC member and customer.
You already introduced yourself, but.
I'm Lisa Mentasana with the Beaverton Resource Center. I'm a RAC member and a customer.
Thank you.
I'm Carlos Romo. I'm first a customer, secondly a RAC member, and thirdly retired.
Right. Commissioner?
Carl Fisher. I'm a commissioner and also a customer.
Of course. We'll go back to Andrew.
I'm Jim Dowd, and I'm a commissioner, and I just took a bite of the cookie. Really good timing on my part.
Andrea.
I'm Andrea Watson, and I do communications for TPWD.
All right. So today, I just wanted to say on your table in front of you is our papers. One is an agenda that I'll go over here quickly. 2, we have tonight's presentation. It is RAC meeting number 3, and we've printed it large because I think it's going to help you with the roundtable discussions that we're going to have. There's things that you'll see on the screen. I wanted to make sure that you had this as a reference guide for it. Also, TPWD has kept track of the questions that were asked at the last RAC meeting and questions received by email, and these are also on the table in front of you, the answers to these questions. And we are going to keep this up. So if you, during this meeting, if there's questions we can't answer in the moment, we'll answer them. We'll update our FAQs here. And if you, and we'll post them on the website. So this will just be an ongoing question and answer document. And then for our roundtable discussion, and I'll give you more instructions when we get there, but these are the 3 questions that we are going to discuss tonight, and they're color coded to help me and you remember which question that we are on. So tonight, again, the agenda, there's a short period here where we just go through approving minutes and such, and then we'd like to hear if you have any takeaways from the last BRAC meeting. And then we move on to roundtable discussions, and that's where we will spend the whole rest of the evening working on our questions, next steps, and adjourn. And I do want to make sure everybody online and here knows that we switched up the public comment period tonight so that anybody attending from the public can comment after each question. So the groups will discuss questions, report back, and then we'll open it up for a short public comment period. So people don't have to wait to the very end if they have something they want to say about the topic that we're discussing. And then Jenna, do you want to give the instructions for online?
Yes, certainly. Everyone joining online, you'll be able to utilize the chat to share comments and alert people that you would like to speak in the room. And that is in the top of your toolbar. And next to the chat is a raise your hand and reactions function that allows for a little more dynamic and animated conversation virtually. Please feel free to reach out to Tricia or myself if you're having any issues, and we'll work directly with you to get those resolved quickly. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jenna. Okay, so again, a reminder of our assignment. I think Tom did a good job summarizing it. Your input is needed for the district to be able to craft approaches to address affordability. We are at meeting number 3, December 13th. When we meet again, it will be 2023, and we will continue this customer assistance program topic. And we are interested to hear if there's any takeaways from meeting number 2, the presentation and the information you received. Any questions that you still have about it? Any takeaways? Open it up in case there were anything. Go ahead.
The way that the professor calculated, well, his metrics that he had produced was pretty unique and thoughtful. I'm in the industry and I've never seen that before, so I thought that was really good.
Great, because your background is in
Rate making.
Rate making. No,
Utility rate.
that's great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No, we can move on to our kicking off our roundtable discussions, which is great because I wanted to make sure we have enough time for. Oh, yeah, thank you. That's what you did. Thank you. The minutes for our last meeting were posted online. I don't know if any of you had a chance to review them, but our practice would be to get them approved at each meeting. So I'd call for a show of hands if you would consider approving the minutes from our last meeting. Okay, that's everybody, I think. All right, so your assignment tonight is to, as a group, we're going to consider the benefits and the drawbacks of different options, potential customer assistance program elements, the options that are available for putting together a program. We're not deciding which one you want the district to do tonight. It's more to consider them and think about the pluses and minuses of the different options. And we definitely want to hear from you if you have options that you think are preferable. The team will use your feedback to put together a prototype program that we'll bring back to you at RAC meeting before. So all the discussion, we're going to keep all your notes that you'll take or anything you write down in your notes. Tammy and Katie and I are going to be taking notes during your discussion. We're going to take all that information, and then Jason, who's online, and and Paul and Tom will work on putting together like a draft program that you can then tweak, because all of these programs have different levers that you can pull. So that will be meeting number 4. So for each discussion question, I'd like, before you start talking amongst yourselves, is just take a few minutes to write down your own thoughts about that. Then share your responses with each other. And that's about 10 minutes to have a discussion. And then we're going to call on you to come to a summary conclusion. We'll go through the first one. We'll help out with the first one and make sure that we're staying on track. The second one will be easier. At the end of that time period, there's a report back to the room. So the most important thing there is somebody at your table has to volunteer to be the person who reports back to the room. So think.
And it can't be staff?
It can't be staff.
Good.
Yeah, it can't be staff.
Make sure.
Staff look
They too come.
Yeah, so it's best to know, to pick that person right away so that they know they can fulfill their assignments. And again, there will be a short time period for public comment in between each discussion. The 3 questions that we are asking tonight is, who should be the focus of our assistance efforts? How should we apply the assistance? And how should the cost of the program be recovered? How we are going to go through this is we introduce the question and some options. And I want to point out there, it does say other, and that's for all of you. This is not meant to be an inclusive, all-inclusive list. So if you can think of another group that you'd like to consider, please add. We have Jason online though. I think, Jason, are you here? We're going to give you just a little bit of a reminder about information that will help you consider this question. Jason.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, are you ready?
Sure, if you're ready to go now.
Yep. If you want to talk about these example assistance programs and their focus.
Yeah, sure. So we introduced these at the very first workshop with you, and they weren't meant to prescribe anything necessarily. What they were was just meant to give you a sense of what's out there, some ideas about what others are doing, sometimes in the area, as in the case of the city of Portland, sometimes not in the area, as in the case of the city of Philadelphia, but just a sense for what is there to look at. In most every case, what you'll find is that there's a targeted benefit, and I'll just take Redmond, for instance. It's a 50% bill reduction, and that benefit is intended to apply to some kind of subset of the customers in the system. And in Redmond's case, it's any low-income customers or senior citizens or disabled persons. So really anyone who fits those 3 categories would qualify for that bill reduction. So if you kind of compare that to what we talked a little bit about last time, how do we qualify for the programs, and then how do we target the correct amount of assistance that we want to give them? That's what each one of these really show us, is how they work, and they work in different ways. So the bill reduction, that's pretty simple. It's a flat out percentage reduction to your bill. Kind of works the same way when you go down to the city of Portland there. For them, the low income customers, which I believe is 60% of median income for the area, they receive sort of graduated discounts based on income, but usually that is about $180 off of a 90-day bill. In Philadelphia, they actually have different rate structures, rate schedules that apply to you depending on your income level. They have a few rate schedules. You apply and you're classified based on your income level. And then there's multiple examples all over the place about things called lifeline rates. And Lifeline rates do this a little bit differently. With lifeline rates, you don't really qualify. Lifeline rates assume that we're going to provide this benefit to everyone within a certain amount of usage, regardless of whether what their income levels are. A very typical lifeline rate would be something between 1,000 and 5,000 gallons per month, where everyone's rate for that first, say, 5,000 gallons is just lower by nature. And so there's some advantages to that approach, but that's the one that I've got there that doesn't really show that you need to have any kind of income qualification.
Great, thank you, Jason. Yeah.
Maybe I'm the only one that has this question, but would an example of some of those be helpful to everybody else, or does everybody feel like I totally understand what that is?
Well, let's go back to the question here is who should be the.
Oh, that's true. It's not the program.
It's not
Okay.
the program.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I think so here are some examples that we saw in only low income.
Right.
It could be low income and elderly, it could be all of these, the other might be, everyone through a lifeline, but that's it's just showing there is no right answer. Again, there's no right answer. So interested in about who should be controlling for consistency. And with that, if you guys are ready, we'll start taking some notes. And again, if you take a minute or more and write down a few thoughts before you start discussing.
I'm going to read it. So we can.
Sure.
Looks like it's three of us.
Sorry, yeah. Yes, thank you, thank Paul.
Well, yeah, I've never, I mean, a lieutenant general. But, a PSC does, but he gets the low income. Low income. Super.
Is everyone in the virtual meeting still able to hear?
I think so. I can hear you.
Great, perfect. So we just wanted to bring up question 1 for the members of our rate advisory committee, and we'll ask anyone who's not a member to wait and hold their input or comment until after the group's discussion. And would anyone like to talk about who they believe should be the focus of the assistance efforts? How do people feel about the different category options in terms of only low income, elderly, disabled, veterans, other folks who should be the focus of assistance? Is there anyone who'd like to weigh in? Feel free to collect your own thoughts first, but also feel free to share out loud if you'd like. Anyone who wanted to share would need to unmute, just as a reminder.
Chai, it looks like you came off mute. Did you have a thought?
Yeah. Well, this echoes. I like the last option of the other, where the example that had where it says that's the other slide that you had that says multiple, or although everyone multiple was kind of based on usage. I think that's a great idea, because not everyone is only low income, or you can make 60 to 80K and still struggle with paying utilities still. I mean, you can. Everyone has different type of expenses and whatnot, but you can still struggle if you're low income, or you use more, use less. I like that approach. I think that's a cool concept.
So that it would be applied based on the volume of water you use rather
Correct.
than exclusively by income is what.
Yeah, because we have the I'm sorry, I'm like my brain ain't working today, but we have the option to do, like, you can have like a a washer to use less water. We can have like a sprinkler system to use less water, but I mean, and we can't restrict flow because you have to have the water meter directed to a single family residential, or apartment complex or whatnot. But why not just based on usage, and then kind of have categories and say, it would cost a base rate of this, and then if you go over X amount, then I don't know. I like that concept. So I just
Want to put it out there for conversation. Jesse, I see your hand up. Do you have something you want to add or another point you'd like to make?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. So I liked what Chai was saying about, it'd be nice. I like the idea of the other. So if during one of the previous presentations, we learned that the average person uses 7 CCF per month for their usage. And if we only started charging after 2 CCF was consumed, it seems like that would be more fair and reasonable, because it's really, really challenging to say, well, veterans should get a certain discount and elderly should get a different certain discount, or disabled should, and how do we track who actually honestly fits in each of those programs? And if it were a low income discount, is it a temporary low income discount where somebody's on unemployment or in between jobs, or is it a permanent low income discount where, perhaps somebody fits into that elderly disabled category and they're below a certain area median income? There's lots of unknowns. And it seems like if the point of the rate advisory committee is indeed to make sure that people don't get their water shut off and to help those that are in need, and we know that these programs, they really just get 20% participation at best. It seems like it would be more effective just to say, okay, we don't actually start charging for water until 2,000 gallons have been consumed, or the equivalent of 2 or 3 CCFs has been consumed.
Okay. So it sounds like a sort of context sensitive approach. And then also really looking at the difference between the emergency rate assistance, which is more temporary need, versus the long-term financially vulnerable assistance programs is of interest.
Right. And it seems like if or maybe if there were a tiered approach as far as consumption goes, 0 CCF to 1 CCF was free, 2 CCFs to 4 CCFs was at the very lowest rate, 5 CCFs to 7 would be a different rate structure, and then above 7 would be the people that are really watering the lawn or using water excessively. Then that would be the highest bill rate, which would financially reach the people that it really needs to reach. The people that are using excessive water would be hit in the pocketbook by it. But then, people that are mindful on their water consumption and or want to be mindful on their consumption because they feel there's a direct correlation between consumption and the cost of the water, that would truly have an impact.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm going to call on Todd, and I suspect Todd might give us some additional context on maybe some of the low income, high volume users and provide some additional context for us to consider. Todd, are you available to talk now?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that in terms of the goal of this committee is to provide the assistance for those who need it the most. That might sound obvious, but people that need it the most are people that can't pay their bill. So this category of low income, to me, really is the ultimate category. We see lots of disabled folks, elderly folks, veterans that we assist in community action. Their biggest problem is they're often low income. It's not their age or their veteran status that causes them not to be able to pay their bill. It's their income. And so I think that really is that really ought to be the focus. Ultimately, any kind of assistance is going to be limited by what the overall system can afford. So like to be able to help a whole array of folks, but if we're really prioritizing, I mean, think about who's going to get their water turned off, or who, instead of getting their water turned off, is going to choose not to pay for their medication, or whatever choices that low income folks are making out there. It is going to be that group. And I just want to quickly add this notion of low participation, 20% participation. By and large, usually that's a function of the limited amount of money that even exists. PGE is doing an income qualified bill discount that's multiple tiered right now, that's geared at I think 60% area median income as its threshold, and they've been doing it like a half a year. They're already up to 40% participation. So this notion that, oh, if you do everything right and we're the Babe Ruth of programs, you might get up to 20 or 30%. I just think that's not correct. I know that's not the direct, that's not this question right now, but I just wanted to throw that in there as well. Thanks.
No, that's great context. So it's considering the total amount that the program funds and how to best focus and distribute that based on a need criteria. And you're saying, generally in your experience, that when you look at some of the other groups, the need that spans across them is income versus another status as the primary focal point. Am I catching that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I dare say that's common sense. What are we talking about? Do you have the money to pay your bill or not?
Right, right.
And
Okay.
that's who we need to help.
And then the other point you're sharing is that there are some other maybe ways to help bring participation to the program. So we should maybe address that as its own issue and not let that be a limiting factor now.
Yeah, I think the cost of these programs, participation levels, these are definitely good challenges to contemplate. There are also things that can be overcome, and there's lots of programs and organizations out there that are coming up with creative ways to auto-enroll people and self-certify and all sorts of things that lower the costs and boost the participation. So, ultimately, if you have high participation, that's a great success. It's going to cost a lot of money because that's going to be that many more people that need to be assisted. But hopefully that's success, and hopefully success means nobody's getting their water cut off. Again, the people that are getting their water cut off, they're not getting cut off because they served in the armed forces. They're getting their water cut off because they served in the armed forces and they are also disabled, and that's caused them to run into really tough circumstances in life. Ultimately, the common denominator is they are low income.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Todd. June, I also see your hand up. Would you like to unmute and share? You may be able to. There you go, June.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Dr. Teodoro mentioned two items that made it easier for people to pay their bills. One was fixed charge, and the other was going to monthly rates. Why have we gone straight to trying to figure out how much money we need to allocate to help people if we could help them by making it easier for them to pay their bills in the first place?
Sure. So you're
What
saying
kind
that the overall structure of the program is important just as is generating a pool of assistance funding for those who really need it.
It seems like we would need to have less assistance. Now, I realize there would be costs in switching to monthly billing, and fixed rates would also change the amount of income you could expect each month, for sure. But seems like from a standpoint of affordability, you don't have to bail people out if they don't need bailing out.
And that kind of ties back to what Todd shared just about making sure you're focusing on folks who really have that high level of need, it sounds like. Okay. Is there anyone else who wanted to weigh in on this topic and provide some food for thought for the group? Right, so
May I ask a question? So we understand there's many vulnerable groups of people that, you know, may risk having their water shut off because of non-payment. Is it an option to kind of build this program for customers that are 2 days out from having their water shut off, that there's an automatic grant that's issued to their bill to avoid shut off? You know, rather than worrying about, you know, what demographic are they? Are they a veteran? Are they disabled? Are they elderly? Are they low income? You know, would it just apply to any customer who faces water shut off?
that's a great question. Jason, do you know whether or not there are models where they preempt water shutoffs by issuing some sort of immediate emergency assistance?
Yeah, there's many different varieties of just emergency assistance, and some of them are triggered by the shut-off notice. Um, I don't know that I could give you an example right off the top of my head, except the district actually has its own emergency assistance program right now, and if you were in that situation, you could petition them for assistance. But I sort of like the idea of the automatic sort of system-wide ping, if you will, for those who are about to be shut off, that there's actions that maybe could be taken to help prevent that event from happening. That's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, you know, sometimes there's barriers, whether there's language barriers or there's, you know, anxiety issues, depression issues, you know, some other contributing factor to, you know, or choosing to buy that medication instead of paying your utility bills. There's some sort of contributing factor that's preventing people from paying their bills and facing that risk. And as far as, you know, I can't really, I don't have experience in this industry as far as like, you know, participation numbers, but if it were an automatic grant that were issued, so to speak, or automatic credit or automatic system at that like 2-day mark, 3-day mark, you know, where a person wouldn't have to apply, that might actually reach the target demographic and avoid the whole issue of we want to help people keep their water on and keep their utilities and when they're struggling.
Yeah. So I want to recap. Does anyone have anything else they want to add before we move to just recapping and we want to confirm what we're hearing? And it's okay if there are points of dissent. They just represent challenges.
$1,000 a year.
Oh.
I mean, nothing to the district.
Unmuted.
Everything.
Gonna mute Libby.
Okay, I can talk.
So I just want to confirm some of the takeaways online really quickly. That there's some interest in exploring how a sliding scale could work to address people who may not be at the lowest income, but still be in some financial pinch. But that may sit in conflict with that may sit in conflict with focusing towards the most financially vulnerable customers facing shutoff. So there's an interest in understanding and exploring the benefits and trade-offs of those two things. And then there's some interest in looking at what kind of sliding scale structure in terms of volume of use, and could some particular portion of the volume of use be free and then go to a tiered payment based on how much you use, so it's still proportional. And then the other takeaway that we've noted here is that really the predominant factor that determines someone's inability to pay seems to be income. And so if you address income, you would likely, as the main reason that creates a financially vulnerable status, that you would be picking up people in other customer groups such as elderly or disabled, because they would have, that would be indicative more of their need than the other potentially qualifying criteria. And then we also heard that there's a desire to really look at the structure of the program to make sure that we're being preventative, both in how the program is structured, and then also are there preventative intervention measures that Jesse noted that can, help people's water from being shut off, issue some emergency assistance, and maybe then convert them over into a bigger rate assistance pool.
Apple Store.
Jenna, can you hear us?
We can.
Okay, we're gonna start the wrap up.
You're fancy.
Report back. Sorry, the report back.
Okay, anyone from the online group want to share with the larger group what your takeaways were?
Yeah, let's start with online. You need one person.
Is there anyone from the online group who'd like to volunteer to share some of the thoughts that came into the discussion this evening?
Yes.
We might have a shy group, Libby, in which case I'm happy to share some of the discussion points that we went through in the virtual room.
Okay, I'm gonna try and get you up on the screen here, but go ahead and remember 2 minutes.
Sure thing. So there was discussion that some sort of sliding scale, to look at how a sliding scale based on income and use could be explored, because there are some people who aren't at the lowest end of the spectrum, but still are in some type of financially difficult position. However, the group also noted that creates a challenge with focusing assistance to those who might be financially most in need, and changes the overall sort of scope and scale of the funding of a program. Then there was also interest in whether or not there could be some way to intervene both in the structure of the program to prevent it from being difficult for people to pay, and then also whether or not intervention for folks facing shutoff could be issued, whether that's an emergency grant or something of that nature. And then how could you help support people moving from emergency assistance to a bigger customer assistance group, so that they are overcoming some of the barriers to opting into that assistance. That they're also, by looking at low income as the predominant qualifying factor, you would assist people who are elderly, disabled, and veterans who were most financially in need, because you would capture at the highest level of need. And then that a tiered approach, where some of the water you use, maybe the first 2 CCFs, was very low cost, then you have a mill use volume, and on up the scale, so that the more you use, the more you pay. So that returned us to the first point around the interplay between volume, conservation, and affordability.
All right, thank you very much, Jenna. And with that, I'll just start at table 3.
Yeah, so just answering the question, not going to, because we went off track, because
You did.
yeah, I'm sure every group did. It sounds like they did as well. We talked and we said we all were kind of in agreement. We got to start at the only low income and then look really at some of the other groups. There's groups that are people that are elderly, disabled, or veterans that have money. And if this is truly an assistance program, we got to start at the base level of people that need it the most, and then start narrow and then broaden the scope depending on, where we're at. But we said that you got to start at the low income, and I'll stick at the first question right now. I'll leave it at that.
That's great. Sounds like you are also doing moving ahead to some of the other questions coming up.
Yeah, and I think really interesting, Chris had a ranked program as well based on his knowledge of, some statistics regarding, families that have disabled people in them, and some veterans stuff, statistics that he knew too. So he had a ranking system that maybe he can elaborate on more later. But yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Kyle, I'll bring your notes back.
Thank you. Well, the first thing we thought about was, what are we trying to solve here? What's the problem? And we talked about the investment that's growing in the water district and that creating affordability issues. So that's why we focused on low income first, because it just made sense tied to the issue. But then we also thought, checked the box on the other as well to keep those like emergency funds going. So maybe a way to think of it is, generally when you think low income, you think kind of annual income, but there can also be low income in just a one period of time if something major happens to people. So we kind of looked at low income as kind of two different facets in that way. Yeah, and then we also talked a little bit about some of the other groups that were on the sheet. And we thought we definitely should at least focus on them as far as outreach, because those might be a good way to look at, how to target some of the low income people. Because we don't want to just hit those low hanging fruit folks. We want to, put that extra time and effort to try to reach as many as possible. So stop there. That's about as far as we went on this topic.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm not the.
No, I know.
Coral and I were a team for Carlos. I hear the same messaging throughout each group. Poverty level, low income people, identifying what poverty is, possibly using the federal poverty guidelines, what a elderly person is there an age that defines elderly? And some other things that we talked about were, are there geographical areas where there's a concentration of more poverty? And how can we look at that and better support those folks in our communities? And property owners, apartments, multi-family units, oftentimes water is incorporated in their rent. And if they can't pay the water, they're evicted, and that creates another layer of challenges in our community. I think that's about it. Everything else was pretty consistent with what everyone else said.
Yeah. Oh.
Could I add one category that I qualify based on my status, and that's retirees. If you want to name people or groups, okay, yeah. Retirees are often a fixed income. I've do some training on financial management, and I've found that some people are living on $16,000 a year Social Security. Period. And they make it in some way or another, but they have no other source of income. And water would be a question as well. And yeah, but just to restate what Lisa said is they ought to be income eligible in some respects, so that it's just not a giveaway.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we are going to move on to our next question.
Do we want to check for public comment, Libby?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Is there public comment? I don't think there's anybody from the public in this room. Anybody online would like a minute?
We do have some folks joining online. Is there anyone from the community online that would like to make a public comment? Please unmute now. We do have Benedict. Please go ahead.
Thank you. If you introduce yourself, your name.
Yeah, hi, I'm Benedict Springer. I'm with the Community Action Partnership of Oregon, I just became interested more in rate making at consumer utilities, and so I thought I'll have a look in here. And I think I just want to add 2 short points, because I think in the online group the discussion came up of maybe targeting people who are about to be disconnected, which in terms of like a goal, it's like a great idea. Like if we can get this connection to a much lower number or 0, I mean, I think then like everybody would be happy, the district, and the people are not getting disconnected. But the problem is with the kind of incentives you build into that, people will are incentivized to build up arrearages. So I think if you're talking about designing a program, I think it's a good idea to think about like how can you design rates that could make water affordable to everyone, and so they'd be incentivized to make their payments. But we also help them in the sense that the payments are an amount they can reasonably contribute. The other point I just wanted to add is that philosophically, like a basic allowance sounds great. We just say, like water access is a human right, everybody should have it. But I think the details might be really tricky, because you don't have like an income tax or something to finance that, right? And so like, can you create a big enough allowance that actually helps low income folks, and at the same time finance that with excess water usage? I think that you might find that's really difficult, except if you like have to have some opportunity to create like rates based on high incomes, and I think that's basically impossible. So I think from our perspective and experience, like administering various bill payment assistance program, we would definitely support something in the former category.
Thank you for that input. Very appreciated.
Thank you. Okay. Now, back here. All right, Jason, I'm going to have you introduce the next question if you're ready.
Yeah. So the next question is about how to apply the assistance once we identify who it is we're trying to assist and how much we're trying to provide. There's different ways to do it. Some of the ideas that are out there, we have a fixed percentage of the bill, kind of like what you saw with Redmond, 50% off. A fixed amount, which is something a little bit more like Portland's, that gives you a sort of fixed amount based on your income. Lifeline rate structure, which we talked about. And we'd like to leave it open for other, really for you to explore other ideas that aren't on here, because we're not trying to limit you in any way. But these are just some of the things that are really out here that are in the neighborhood and other people are using. Let's go to the next. So just try to kind of get everybody back into a couple of the numbers without getting too heavy on this. Just we haven't looked at this since the very first workshop, so here's something to keep in mind. The total bill, the average bill for the typical customer uses 7 CCF per month. We'll be going from about $70.46 in 2022 to $96.86 in 2026. So plus $35.21 from where we're at today. And we're going to focus on that way. We put a little blue box around that one because we're going to show you a couple of examples here, and we're going to base those examples off of 2026. So let's go to the next ones. So if we had a fixed percentage on a bill, how does this work? Well, if we have no assistance, we're not going to have any change to that. So we're going to have that $96.86 bill. It's just going to be $96.86. Pretty straightforward. And then the 10% example, cut 10% off, that'd be a $9.69 reduction, 20%, and you can keep that thing going forever, 30, 40, 50%. But that's how it works. Once we determine how much assistance we're trying to provide, we would apply the same percentage to the situation, and it results in a net new bill for those customers who are qualified. So some of the things to consider here, those high volume users, if there are any, are going to get more of a discount than the smaller customer users. Yeah, it's still going to be 10 or 20% or whatever, but the total dollar amounts provided there will be larger. And one thing to keep in mind on high use is that I know that Dr. Teodoro mentioned that there's a correlation between income and water use. And, he really, I think in my opinion, he misspoke, because there is a correlation, but it has a lot more to do with irrigation than it does with the typical needs that he talks about in his metrics. So keep that in mind. There are low-income families out there who have large multi-generational families living with them who don't irrigate, but still use a lot of water for indoor needs, cooking and bathing and cleaning clothes. Just to keep that in mind. Does not support conservation. Um, you know, you're giving a discount off of water usage here. So in a manner of speaking, you're kind of encouraged to use more water in a certain way. You're going to get discounted on it. It provides greater assistance to larger families and those with less efficient plumbing fixtures. So that's kind of what I was talking about a second ago. Let's take a look at the next one. This is a fixed amount on the bill. So we gave a little bit of an example about this at the last workshop, and this was based off of Dr. Teodoro's hours of minimum wage levels that we talked about with him. So in this table, what we're seeing is kind of a recast of what you saw before. If we wanted to maintain the 4.8 hours of minimum wage that it takes to pay the $96.86 bill, if we wanted it to be at today's level of 4.8 hours, we would need to be providing assistance of $12.36 per month. So that would be a fixed amount that would come off the top of the bill, and that would, through mathematics, would get us to the point where that bill would then be at approximately 4.8 hours of minimum wage to pay. And then if you wanted to improve that metric, to go from 4.8 to something else, and we're just going to say 4 hours, just as an example, because it could be anything. You could come up with whatever you wanted here. You'd need to provide more assistance. So to get from 4.8 up to 4 hours, though, would require $26.49 in assistance, and that would get you a net bill of $70.37. So it just gives you a way of looking at it. Like, how would you come up with a fixed amount? Well, this approach that we're showing here as an example is just using that hours of minimum wage metric as a guideline to help you get there. That's all it is. You're not bound to it. You could come up with a fixed amount that you think is more appropriate. So under a couple considerations here, high volume use customer would get the same amount of assistance as a small use customer. It's a fixed amount. So whether you're using more or less, you're going to get the same discount on the bill. It's going to be a fixed amount. And that fixed amount might provide greater support for conservation efforts. Because it is fixed and it's not a percentage decrease, there's an economic element in there that might support a little bit better conservation. Let's go to this last one. This one's a little bit more complex. I'll try to walk through this with you slowly. This is trying to get this done using a combination of tools, and that's something that you've got available to you. So we talked about doing a fixed amount. We talked about doing changes to fixed charges and making some discounts to the volume rates. Now, what this table is, the reason I'm not there tonight is because I'm not feeling all that great, so I apologize for the coughing. But what this one is showing you is some examples of typical users with different levels of water usage. And excuse me a minute. And what the bill outcomes might be if you used some different approaches here. So in these examples, we're taking a fixed charge of $21.25, and the first two CCF at $10 per unit, and then the remainder of the volume bill in this case would be $0. So that would get you a revised bill of $31.25. So what this is doing is it's just discounting a couple of CCF of usage and it's creating a savings of about $4.06 is all from there. As you go up the scale in usage and you're applying these different tools, the amount that you're getting on the net bill will end up costing more, right? So those who are using more water will end up not having a savings. They'll end up having additional cost the further up you go. So the idea here is that you might be able to get wider participation with something like a lifeline rate. You don't have to apply. Every customer qualifies. You're all going to get the same assistance. But that's kind of part of the issue too, is that the assistance may be received by those who don't really need it. We just had a lot of comments from the groups about wanting to focus on low-income customers. This applies to all customers. So it's going to result in some low-income customers with large use. We're going to be providing that subsidy. So remember that large family I talked about before? Because they have high water usage, they're going to end up, their bill's probably going to be higher. That's part of what this table is trying to show us. Just something to think about. So in reviewing all the different things that you have in front of you, you're going to have a different change in percentage to the bill, or a fixed amount, or a lifeline rate. It requires, do you require an application to qualify? For the first two, it would be yes. We're trying to qualify you based on income. On the last one, the lifeline rate, the answer is no. Nobody's going to qualify on income. Focused on serving targeted customers, basically low income. So same answer really. We're focusing on low income on the percentage and fixed amount. We're not on the lifeline rate. Is the program only for single family customer assistance? It's yes across the board. There's some good reasons for that. That have to do with the way multifamily customers are served, and how they are, individual dwelling units really aren't customers of the district. It's the people who own the apartment complex who are the customers, and so that's just part of one of the challenges that we're going to have to work with here. Assistance increases by volume of water use. Under the percentage approach, it's going to be yes. Under the other ones, it's no. Assists those who do not need it. With the lifeline rate, you're going to have that. So one of the trade-offs you get there you get big participation and you don't have to qualify anyone, but you are going to get assistance for those who don't actually need it. Is it going to support conservation goals? Not really under the percentage approach, not so much anyway, and under the fixed and lifeline rate, there's a possibility that could be designed so that we could encourage more conservation.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, that's it, right? Okay.
Yeah. We're sorry that you're not feeling well, but we are very glad you're not here. All right, so we can get started with question number 2. And if you want to take a few minutes to think about your answer before we start your group discussion, that is.
All right, virtual group, please go ahead and spend a few minutes sort of putting your own thoughts together, and at about 3 minutes after 7, we'll open it up for a group conversation and we'll record some of your thoughts. I'll ask Trish to do some of the recording for this round, and then we'll move into confirming some of those takeaways, and we'll then ask one of you to volunteer to report back to the room. So we'll reconvene in a couple minutes.
This is Jason real quick, since I'm in the online group here. I thought I would just come back to you all and say that, when we put this presentation together, we wanted to give all of the participants at least some idea about, examples of how it works. That was the idea for these slides, but what I would encourage you to do is to not get too wound up in the mechanics of those slides. Just think more about what kind of discount, what kind of thing do you want to provide? Is it going to be some kind of fixed assistance or percentage assistance or lifeline rate or something like that? And try not to get too bogged down in the numbers.
And similarly, so if there's a little bit of a build your own approach, where we'd love to hear what that is. So thank you for that reminder, Jason. Okay, I'll give you a few minutes. We'll check back with you in 2 minutes, so 7:04. All right, everyone, welcome back to the group conversation portion. Trisha, are you on standby for note taking? Wonderful, thanks so much, Trisha. How's everyone feeling about the way in which the amount of relief should be determined? Jesse?
So I had to pull up my own Tualatin Valley Water District bill just to kind of look at it. And I can see, you know, obviously Tualatin Valley Water District and Clean Water Services is on there. Tualatin Valley makes up 2/3 of the bill. Clean Water makes up 1/3 of the bill. And out of that Tualatin Valley portion, it seems that, like, for me personally, the volume based on the amount of CCFs is about, I would say, about 75% of the bill, while there's that 28% that's a fixed charge. So it seems like maybe, you know, looking at it on a CCF basis probably isn't good, especially if somebody's low income. But maybe it would make more sense that if there's a program that people would have to apply for, that we would grant 100% assistance both for the fixed and the CCF. Is that kind of the idea behind this program, or are we looking only for a program that applies a credit towards the CCF or the rate at which the CCFs are billed?
Just Jason here real quick on a comment. I think it's up to you to recommend, you know, what you would prefer there. So we didn't want to constrain you with any of that, but if you wanted to make the discount applicable to both the fixed and the volumetric portion, I think that's a fair recommendation.
Okay, and I think that would, I mean, that would be one of the things that I would recommend is that whatever program we have, so I guess it would be the other category of how we should apply the assistance. And it should be applied to if somebody can't pay their bill based on their income. Perhaps there's an assistance of either 100% or, you know, maybe a sliding scale of 80%, 60%, and so forth. And I also think that, you know, asking the question of how many people are in the home would be important, because if there's those households that have 10 people in the home, we would want to really take that into consideration on a water bill, especially if it's a single family, 1-bedroom house versus, somebody calling in and having the same amount of consumption. If there's just one person in the household and they say that they need assistance, I think all of those inputs should be considered when looking at the program and the amount of assistance that would be offered.
Great. Yeah, so household size is a part of understanding household need, as is in income.
Right.
Yeah, super. I'm going to go to Todd and then to June. Todd, go ahead.
Not much to add, just maybe in the other category of would we want to consider a tiered discount program, again, kind of going back to income and need, where I guess it would be a percentage, but the poorest customers would qualify for the most discount, and however many tiers you might have of that might be a variation on this. And the only other thing that I wanted to just kind of throw out there that I alluded to last time was there's this dimension of whether or not the design would require application and this trade-off between participation and helping the right folks. And again, I just think it would be worth considering tools of self-certification, where the big thing that's implied or believed about self-certification be rife with fraud. But I think that's I think it's useful to question that assumption. Are people really taking advantage of the discount program for their low income neighbors? Sort of like voter fraud. People talk about it, but in reality, it doesn't really happen. So if you have self-certification, you really streamline getting a lot of people involved, and still have the targeted type of assistance, or even auto enrolled. I'm far from an expert on this stuff, but looking at certain census tracts that might just auto enroll people. So I just wanted to make that point as well.
Great, that's a great point. Thank you. Thanks. June, just doing a quick time check. We have about 5 minutes until we report out. So June, go ahead, and then I'll call on Chai to make sure Chai is able to also contribute. Go ahead, June.
I guess more than anything else, I have questions.
Sure.
How would a fixed amount be determined? Is it by the amount owed or by the income of the individual? Would the fixed amount be same for everybody? Also, the ultimate hope would be we give them assistance and they get back to the point where they can pay their bill. Which program, fixed percentage or fixed amount, is more likely to cause them to be able to catch up?
Yeah.
Lifeline rate sounds like, we don't want to be supporting everybody.
Lifeline feels kind of too
all I would say.
all-encompassing. Okay, lifeline rate.
Yes.
Thank you.
Especially since I don't need it. So, but it would be given to everyone, right?
And let's have Chai go, and then perhaps if we have a minute, Jason can answer, and otherwise we'll turn your question back to the larger room for discussion. June. Chai, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I like everyone's comments so far. I'm sorry, I wasn't watching names online, so I wasn't sure who was talking. But I do like kind of the approach of what everyone was saying in regards to helping the low income based on the tier base. I think that was great. If there's some type of like a base amount, base fee that covers the typical standard cost for someone to maintain like the water main, that covers there's always cost. So, but I kind of like the rate structure in the sense that if you use, everyone has to pay like a base amount to cover the basic cost of function and all that. But then if you use less and you use 2 CCF, then I feel like it includes more of everyone versus put everyone into a category. Because I can be making 30K now, hit COVID, and then lose all my income and then be low income. So can we really put ourselves in? But I'm not an expert in low income or any other fields. I'm just asking in general. So that's kind of where I was if like the last speaker, I'm not good at names, but like he was saying how if a low income saw a bill for $100 or a bill for $10 with the same amount, won't you pay the $10 10 times versus paying a $100 bill if you can, if you're trying to make ends meet? So
That's a good point.
That was my 2 cents about that.
Yeah, that's a good point and connects to what June noted about whether or not it's by what you owe in total or your individual bill, and how do we encourage maybe people not having this backlog of unpaid bills that become insurmountable to pay and catch up on. And Jason, do you have any ability to comment on what June and Chai noted in terms of the way a fixed amount, some of the nuances of the fixed amount approach?
I think the question was, what's the best way to go about determining that? I'm not sure there's a best way. We did provide some examples of using the hours minimum wage metric as a helper to get you there. So if you're trying to manage to this metric that Dr. Teodoro laid out for us, then some of the math becomes pretty clear. You need to provide a certain amount in order to get to those different levels of hours minimum wage, and maybe that's helpful. Maybe the bigger question is that going to be enough? If we set it at 4 hours or whatever we set it at, is that actually going to help somebody who has an affordability problem with the bill? And I think that methods for coming up with what that needs to be are, there's so many of them everywhere across the country, and I think with water districts like ours, we're trying to do the best we can to make sure that there's ample assistance being provided. But where did Redmond come up with their 50%? It was a feel-good number. And where is Portland coming up with their $180 every 3 months? That's a feel-good number too. It gets them to a point where they feel like they've done something about the affordability of their service in a meaningful way. So the hard question that's in all of this for us is, where is that level of assistance that's going to be ample enough to really help somebody who needs it? What is it? So I don't know if I answered that question because it is challenging. We're one of the things I said at our last workshop was we're not going to be able to nail this with any kind of precision. We're going to be able to give reasonable estimates and try to do the best we can with the information we have to work with. And we can always adjust it in the future as things change.
Thank you, Jason. I'm going to let Jesse close the comments, and then I'm going to call on Trish with the remaining couple minutes we have to confirm the takeaways. Go ahead, Jesse. You there, Jesse?
So sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
No problem, no problem.
Do
Go
we
ahead.
expect this assistance program would look like a one and done where you can apply it to 1 2-month bill cycle and that would be it and you wouldn't be able to qualify again? Or do we expect this as more of an ongoing program where those people in the extremely low income category would be able to be billed at a different rate or receive that, kind of like bill forgiveness amount throughout the year?
Great distinction.
I think that's one of the questions you have before you to recommend to the board, because we already have the emergency assistance program and you can pay for an entire bill with it, but you'd only do it once. So if that's enough in your estimation, then maybe the answer is that's enough. But if you're wanting to have something more permanent, I think that's one of the recommendations you need to come up with for the board. These programs that we're talking about here, are more along the lines of ongoing programs. So they would be monthly, the ones that we've showed examples of tonight.
Great, thank you, Jason. Jesse, I hope that just confirms for you that it's at the discretion of the advisory committee to make a recommendation around that. So we're not telling you what to do, but that there is the emergency assistance program. And so the interest here is to create something that could work alongside of that. Trisha, can you quickly confirm some of the takeaways?
Yeah, do we have someone from the group who would like to volunteer to report out to the larger group before I do that so you guys can take notes?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, was that Jesse?
Yes.
Yep, Jesse.
Okay. All right, we'll see how good I am at pulling together my string of thoughts here in a capsule. So whatever program we have should be based on if somebody can't pay their bill, which is based on their income, and that might maybe a sliding scale of 60% to 80%, and maybe asking how many people are living in the home, along with how many rooms are in the house. And then also, you know, we had a lot more questions than answers, I think. So would it be a one and done or bill forgiveness at the end of the month? So again, going back to the lowest income, that would qualify for the highest discount. And then we have how would a fixed amount be determined, the amount owed or the income. The ultimate hope would be to provide assistance so that people can get back to paying their bill. And there was a question there on whether or not what option would be best for that. And someone noting that the lifeline feels too encompassing. And then we have covering
Can you
the
hold on for just 1 second?
Yes.
You're going faster than I can type. So the goal is to get them back on track.
Yes.
And then can you pick up from there?
Let me scroll back up. Sorry, I was taking more like verbatim notes than.
I can jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna mute someone for a So the goal is to help everyone afford their bill, avoid disconnection, but for those who have an intermittent need or a backlog, to help them get up to a more stable long-term position is how I took the note. And then the other point was wanting to see some options potentially that explored how to get to the right fixed amount so that the level of assistance was ample enough.
Sorry. No, I think I got them all right this time, Paul.
And I didn't quite catch that last little bit, wanting to see options.
Can you hear
What
me,
was
Jenna?
We can, just give us 1 second, Libby. It was making sure that the fixed amount, wanting to see some version of a fixed amount option that ensured that the level of monthly assistance was enough for people who are genuinely low income and in need. And we'll be here to support you, Jesse, so don't worry.
Okay, we're gonna go. I think we'll start in the room this time. We'll start with your table, Tom.
Yeah, I'm pretty, no, I don't think there's a final conclusion, but we did talk about, that it appears that maybe the fixed, income, the fixed amount would be, the most equitable. My question was, what is most equitable for all customers? And I started liking, Lifeline until I find out that, it might not be. So we then talked about, what would be the best approach? How could we use that? Kind of, we didn't vote, but we think maybe a fixed percentage seems to be the best support that's most in need. The disadvantage of Lifeline, for example, does not support the emergency needs situations. We do agree, I think, that there should be education. There should be some kind of incentive to conserve and maybe give better assistance. And we need to have a program that's going to support people that actually need it, that are struggling, as opposed to what I talked about earlier, Lifeline, where everybody gets a break. That it?
All right.
So we had a similar discussion around the lifeline, how that would be a good answer if the purpose of this group was to discuss how to more equitably like decrease rates across the entire user group, but that's not what the focus is. It's about those most at need. And so we were basically also came to the conclusion that the percentage, fixed percent, was sounded best overall to address the affordability needs. And also there's somewhat of a like optics to it where if you hear, oh my gosh, I'm getting 20% off the bill rather than, oh, I'm just getting $12 off $200, that sounds better. And so that might help like get folks excited to apply to the program. We also touched on conservation a bit, just in regards to how we help like guide that conversation as well, and do it through like a tiered approach or a block approach. But yeah.
Table 3.
You know, a broader comment that we're trying to answer a problem that I don't clearly define. So we have the advantage of having customer service here. So, you know, looking at the people who actually are in customer service, that these statistics, I'm shocked at how few people were there. And then if you look at the number of people who got cut off on an annualized basis, maybe 6,000, 10% of your base. So I don't know, I would say just, I want to talk to those people and then I'll talk about solutions. But given these solutions, we thought I'll go backwards because I think there was consensus at this table that the fixed percentage is probably the least bad. And assuming if you had, because it doesn't really address conservation and maybe you need to put caps on it. So you might have a cap percentage with a cap. And the fixed amount, I don't think works because in our people talking, it's like, well, I'm really poor and I get 180 bucks, or I'm sort of poor and I got 180. So it's not really scaled. It doesn't take that into account, or family size, household size, to the gentleman who's talking about multi-generational homes, et cetera. And the lifeline, I think, is way too complex and it just spreads it around. Things just get buried in it. And so if I'm someone and I can't pay my water bill and someone's trying to explain a rate structure like that, I'm going to say that's just gobbledygook. And whether the overall rate is 1.95 cents or 1 or 2 cents, it's just going to get lost in the mix. And why subsidize people who don't need to be subsidized? So I think this group was of the opinion that the fixed percentage of the bill, perhaps with a cap, might be to look at. Did I capture that right, gentlemen? Here.
Yeah.
You guys did discuss a step scale on the fixed percentage. So there might be some people who don't need the full percentage off, but they need the small help. Bracket.
All right, thank you very much. Jenna, to the virtual world.
Great. I'm going to invite Jessie to unmute. Jessie's going to share on behalf of the remote attendees.
Thank you. So we looked at more so the other approach. We thought, you know, whatever program we should have should be based on customers that aren't able to pay their bill. It should definitely involve a sliding scale to include inputs such as how many people are actually living in the home and how many bedrooms there are. And we kind of had some more questions come out of the discussion more so than answers. We were looking at it as, should this be a one and done approach where each customer is, you know, capped at one-time participation per, you know, 12-month cycle or 6-month cycle or something? Or should it be more like an approach where it's a portion of bill forgiveness, which is ongoing monthly? And of course, the lowest incomes would qualify for the highest amount of discount or credit. We talked about how it's determined, the amount owed, or the accumulated amount of the bill. And then we also discussed it should be based on income. And the goal is to get them on track so that we help them get a more stable long-term position on paying their bill each month or every other month. on time. We wanted to see options that made sure that the fixed amount options were enough to support the extremely low income customers. And we really thought that the lifeline should be avoided because it really doesn't have much impact on those that are in the lowest income categories.
Thank you very much. Just tag one more thing on, Libby. We also had some good discussion around ways to encourage participation and reduce barriers that we think will come back later in the conversation.
Thank you. Is there anybody, any public comment?
Anyone in the virtual space that would like to make a public comment? Feel free to unmute.
All right, I think we can move on to question number 3.
All right.
Jason?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, question 3.
Okay. So this third question gets to how we're going to fund this program through a combination of your other suggestions, how much support to provide and how to provide it. And then based on some working assumptions that we're going to need to make about levels of participation, hopefully as high as we can get it, then we're going to have some kind of estimated or expected size for the program. And I talked about this a little bit at an earlier workshop about showing you what that size might look like with some basic assumptions in place. And this is really kind of bringing that back for further consideration. So you got some choices here. First of all of the assistance that we're talking about, whatever it is going to be coming from the district. So it needs to come from the resources that the district has available to it. And primarily that means it's customers' user charges and rates. So there's a question before you about who should bear the burden of that. One would be to say, well, all the customers would bear that burden. There's 60,720 currently in the system. Another way to look at it would be that only the single-family residential customers would bear that burden. So 56,376 single-family residential customers. Is there another way to do it? Well, we need to figure out how to work it within the number of customers we have in the system. So some combination of this, we leave that open to you to explore and discuss. Let's go to the next one. More numbers. All right, so just things to consider. So on one hand, if we're thinking about making this program funding come from the volume rates, it means that we're going to need to increase volume rates for the group that we identify. So if we're talking about all customers, what we're looking at in this table here is different levels of program funding. So these have yet to be determined, but we wanted to just give you an array. So you got a $500,000 annual program funding for the assistance program all the way up to $3 million, just to give you a sense of what you're looking at here. And then as you go into the first column there, if we were to recover that cost, the program funding, through a volume charge that applied to all customers and all volumes, then we would have an increase of about 10 cents for every $1 million in program size. And it breaks down kind of like we're showing there. So 5 cents for 500,000, 10 cents for $1 million, and so on. If we're going to focus that recovery only on the single family residential customers, well, then it's going to be a little bit higher because we have fewer customers to recover it from, and we have fewer units of volume to recover it from. And so you're just going to have more. So something to think about, the cost recovery charges are then proportionate to what you're using. And this could be an important feature for you. So keep this in mind when we start talking about the alternatives. But those who use more would end up paying for more of the program costs. Think of it that way. And it can promote conservation because we are going to be increasing the volume rates. So there's a price signal there that says water's more expensive. Normally that results in people taking a look at their usage and being more mindful of how they use water. All right, let's go to the next one. We could also do this based off of fixed charges.
One question before we go. It's a dumb question because I should know the answer, but that's 10 cents per DCF increase?
Yeah, dollars per CCF is what it shows.
Okay, it's not 10 cents more in your bill, it's per
unit of volume.
volume. All right, there you go.
So the other way to do this would be through fixed charges. And same kind of rules apply based on the program size and based on the number of customers that we're working with. You could get a charge of about $1.37 extra per month for every $1 million in program size if you assess that fee to all customers in the system. And just like we saw before, if you apply it to fewer customers, you're going to get a slightly larger fee. So in this case, with the residential customers, it goes up a bit to $1.45 for every $1 million in program size. So this things to consider here. Doesn't really promote conservation. This only works on the fixed charges. You know, in a way, your water bill would go up slightly. You know, $1.37 for every $1 million in program size. And, you know, we don't expect that would have the same result for conservation as the volumetric component that we talked about before. Cost recovery charges are equal regardless of water use. So this is based on your meter size. It doesn't matter how much water you're using. And so for those who use a lot of water, and this would definitely be the preferred approach because, you know, they're going to pay just a few dollars per month to fund the program, whereas if they're using a great deal of water, they might pay quite a bit more than that under the other example.
There's a question for Paul here. Under the annual assistance program funding, that range, what would be covered by, what would that money cover? The assistance?
That was actually my question. Is that dollar amount applied to the customer base, or does that include administration of the program and everything?
Oh, the customer base. So that would be the amount of the award.
Okay.
That we would take as a charge. Yeah. So it wouldn't count. It wouldn't be
Good. All right. Jason, are we ready for the next slide?
Go ahead.
Okay.
And just to make sure that you have this on the table, at least, you should know that you're not limited to one or the other. You can use a combination of both. And we're showing you this example. I know it's a lot more numbers to keep in mind, but right now the fixed portion of the bill makes up about 20% of the district's revenue, and the volume portion makes up about 80%. So if you were to split it that way, you would get, you know, a different set of outcomes still. So you're still going to get, you know, some of the benefits of having a fixed charge there, which one of the benefits there is that you're probably going to get that every single month, regardless of the usage. And then you still get some benefit from passing on more of the program cost to higher water users by including a portion into the volume charge. So these numbers here are just meant to show you, you know, just an example, not meant to limit you in any way, but these are just meant to give you something to think about as you're talking about how do we recover these costs from our other customers. It would be the customers who aren't qualifying for the assistance program. They're the ones who are going to be paying this. Okay, I think that's the last one.
I've got a question. Jason, are there any legal ramifications that you know of in applying this or any of the programs we're talking about here?
No, there's a number of assistance programs in Oregon in place right now that are all funded internally by the utility. So I don't see any. Of course, I'm not an attorney either. So you've got one over there in Clark Balfour, so he can probably weigh in on this if he's there even.
Clark is not there, but we have talked to Clark about this matter, and everything that's been discussed tonight is legal in Oregon for us. Yeah, it wouldn't be necessarily in California or other states, but in Oregon, we're within the law. It would just take board action.
And I add one other thing. I think there's an important data point that we did a survey of our customers and to ask them question, how much, if you're willing to help, how much would you be willing to help? And Andrea just pulled up the numbers. And Andrea, I think you said it's somewhere between $4 and $5 a month that the majority of our customers would be willing to contribute to this kind of a program. Did I misstate anything there?
You said by the bill, so every,
Yeah, okay, by every other month.
so think about it like $30 a year.
Okay.
Is that across all customer classes or just single family residential?
It was a statistically valid survey across all.
Of all.
Yeah.
Well,
We
the
only have
respondents were citizens.
Yeah.
Correct.
So they could be multifamily.
Right.
They could be single family, but they weren't necessarily responding in their capacity as a business, although some of them probably own businesses too.
Yeah, but we didn't call any, we took the commercial customers, you know.
No, but they could own a business. They'd be a
Right.
customer. Yeah.
I think people are looking at it from an individual perspective.
Were the numbers you surveyed large enough to actually come up with a baseline?
Yeah, plus or minus 5% for that question.
The percentage?
Accuracy, yeah. So we ask enough that we can project.
So there's some community input to share along with this. Jason, so this summary tables in your slide deck. Jason, do you want to quickly go over, summarize?
And this just lists some of the considerations and how they map into the examples that we just looked at. So we had, the volume charge, the fixed charge, and then a combination of volume and fixed charges. And then along the left-hand side there, you see some of those considerations. So having an option for cost recovery to be subsidized by all customers, yes, all of them would provide that. Having an option where it would only be subsidized perhaps by just single-family customers, yes, you can do that under all three of them. Large volume users pay more. Under the volume approach, that would be a big yes, and under the combined one, it's sort of a lesser yes, but still 80% of it's recovered in that particular example from the volume charge. So yes, they would pay more. Large volume customers would. All customers are charged the same each month. That's the fixed option. So it's a fixed amount on your bill that you would pay. Balance is cost recovery between fixed and volume charges. So, with both of the volume and fixed ones, there's no balance there. It's just one or the other. And on the other one, we actually are balancing that. So we're at least in the example we gave, we're setting that proportionally based on how the district recovers its revenues today. So there is a balancing effect that we're trying to achieve there. And provides greater support for conservation efforts. With the volume component, we would say yes. With the fixed component, not so much. With the combined one, there is an important volume component. So yes, we would expect there to be some, but probably not as much as the pure volume approach.
All right. Thank you very much. Any questions before we break? Yes.
So there's roughly 3,000 customers that are not single-family units. So those are businesses across all mix of businesses.
They're not a little bit more than 3,000, not single family. So that would include multifamily apartment complexes.
Okay.
It would include commercial customers. It would include institutional customers, schools, hospitals, parks, in irrigation, and we also have fire line customers. So these sprinkler systems, in many places, those count as a separate customer.
Thank you.
All right, let's break. Thanks, Jason.
Well, no.
All right, everyone, let's take a minute to just put our individual thoughts down, and in a couple minutes, we'll open for group dialogue. And if anyone is ready to open the dialogue, feel free to raise your hand in the chat and we'll call on you and start documenting some of the perspectives and input on this topic.
This is Jason. I guess that survey that Tom mentioned is interesting to me. I hadn't heard that before. And if I want to make sure I get that right in my notes here, they responded and said that they would be willing to pay about $4 to $5 a month. Is that right? Or
Yes,
bi-monthly?
$4 to $5 off of their bill, off a bi-monthly bill, was the comfort zone that was most commonly reported by existing customers across all customer classes, but they did not indicate that customers were not required to say if they were answering on behalf of themselves individually or as a business by customer account type, I guess is my point.
Just to put that into context a little bit with the fixed charge slide that we showed, that would put you in a program funding level somewhere in the range of 1.5 to 2 million per year if you applied that to all customers.
Thank you, Jason. That's helpful. That's a helpful baseline point. Are any of the particular cost recovery options standing out for anyone? Are you building your own hybrid version? How are you all feeling about cost recovery? Jesse, go ahead.
So it seems like this program would really only be able to reach to single family residential. And a majority of the customers are single family residential. So my opinion on the question of how should the cost program be recovered is it should be applied to single family residential. And I would think that applying it on the per CCF charge would be, going towards that goal of water conservation. But if the goal is to have program stability, then it should be billed under fixed rate, because theoretically people can conserve water, and if we're trying to meet a target, we would want it on fixed rate regardless of consumption.
That's excellent. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Just a small comment. I think it's sort of along those lines because it is a challenge to get any kind of discounts to renters whose water bill is part of their rent. And I'm just wondering if it's all customers, what about landlords that pass along any increases in the form of rent to customers that might otherwise actually be customers who would want to help out. And then the other thing that I'm actually still stuck on the $4 to $5 per month, because I think that's a really interesting place to start, right? It's like, what's the what's the what's the tolerance of the customers to help out in the first place? You could kind of work it from there. I I thought it was interesting that the way it was put was $4 to $5 per bill was the most common response. It makes me wonder um, if other people said a lot more or something like that. Like, what's the, sort of like mean versus median question, I guess. But ultimately, I don't know what happens if the torches and pitchforks come out if you go too high. But ultimately, you are limited, I guess, in the customer base's tolerance for how much you can help. And that's one other way to kind of work it.
And to both of your points, even though in this scenario, single family are the customers, as are the landlords, and multifamily, it is at the discretion of the committee to make to determine if there's any future conversation that needs to happen around multifamily, though they're not customers, that there's no reason that you can't decide to say, let's look more at that. So we just wanted to make that clear. And then let's just recap really quickly. So the assistance, since it applies to or can be received by single family, then they should be the primary group subsidizing the program. And it would be a CCF charge is maybe more pro-conservation, but for the sake of program stability, a fixed rate approach might be a way to go. Did I capture that correctly, Jesse?
Oh, yeah, sure did.
Okay.
I raised my hand for one other point. Are you ready for that?
Oh, sure. And then I'll recap Todd's and go to June after that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jesse.
One other thing, are we able to lobby the Oregon State Legislature for help with funding this program, or are we able to ask for federal funds? Have we considered that in addition to, cost recovery to fund the program?
So
I might be able to. I might be able to
I was going to
answer.
say Jason had a great slide in the first presentation. So go ahead, Jason.
Well, it's not unheard of. So, we do have a federal program that seems to have difficulty getting up and on its feet, called the they call it LIWAP. It's the equivalent of LIHEAP. If you're familiar with these terms, LIHEAP is a affordability program that the federal government has had in place for a long time for electric and gas bills. And it's federally funded. They did authorize the water affordability program, but it has not, had robust funding levels as far as I can tell. They've had some, but it has kind of dwindled out pretty quickly. The district would certainly avail themselves of any of these resources that were available, for sure. What's available from the state, I think I probably can't answer on that front because I haven't seen anything that would indicate that there's state funding available. But there are other programs too that that kind of work towards the same purpose that might be worth keeping in mind. There's housing subsidies for renters through Section 8 and other programs. There's other things that are available for people out there, but the thing we're focusing on here is what the district can do specifically for its customers. And what I after talking with staff and everyone else, I think what they're hoping to do is to self-fund the program so that they can count on it, and they're not kind of waiting on federal or state funding or any of those things to be able to help their customers. So whatever this level of support is that we come up with out of this process, the idea for the district is that we're going to support it. We're going to pay for it. And then if we get anything else from anyone else, that'll just be icing on the cake for us.
Great, thank you. I'm going to call on June and Chai, and then I'm going to loop back to Todd, and then we'll confirm. So June, please go ahead.
I think I'm there.
You're there. We gotcha.
Okay. I guess I favor the cost spread to all of the customers, partly on the principle of greater good. because they will indirectly benefit from employees who are not worried about their water bill, if nothing else. The volume and fixed combined seems like it would be the best way to go, because with the volume, you're still encouraging conservation, but if part of the funding is in the fixed, then you know how much you're getting each month, each billing cycle. That's all I have to say. Oh, and I should mention that I had technical difficulties and I had trouble getting on this at all, and I missed about the first hour.
Well, you're
Bye.
keeping up swimmingly, June, so well done, and thank you for that. Chai, did you want to add anything? And then I'll go back to Todd.
Yeah, just really quickly, and I apologize, my voice is on its last leg here. But I just can add something about the I'm sorry, the LIWA, the Federal Water Assistance Program, because at Community Action, we do administer that. And Jason's right that in terms of it getting off the ground, it doesn't appear to be, necessarily, is it going to be renewed or not? We're not sure, but we did we were given about $900,000 to provide assistance over 2 years, and we spent that in less than a year. So that is just to say a couple of things. One is the need and is really, really great out there. If the assistance is there, and this is Washington County specifically, customers will seek it out because they need it. And then just to also say, if that funding or any state funding doesn't come, it just puts that much more pressure on the question that we're raising right now. Sorry.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chai, what are you thinking?
I kind of like the fixed and volume combination piece of it, like in the sense that if you go with single family residentials, has like a fixed amount, and then with the combination of, say, if you use 2 CCF versus 7 or 9, then the more you use, kind of basically everyone discussion on the last question, if you have more individuals living in the property and you're using more, and then or it will kind of help you look at the bill to consume less. And then in regards to like multiplex or commercial or multifamily units, like apartment complex, then I think if there's like a fixed amount as well, and then based on volume usage, it would be a good idea in regards to how much you actually pay and less and conserve.
Thank you, Chai. I just want to confirm some of the takeaways. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer to provide this back to the larger room? And if not, we'll note them and share them. But if there's someone who'd like to share on behalf of the group, let us know. We want to confirm that there was primarily more support for the combination approach, a blend of the fixed rate and volume cost recovery, fixed and volume cost recovery. Jesse noted that it adds a little element of conservation, but also contributes to program stability, may allow for some other funding sources to come in. And thank you in the chat, Benedict, for also the nod to some of the funding opportunities out there. We know that TVWD does pursue them. Thanks for sharing that, Jason. There's a need to really consider what the ripple effect is into multifamily. If we're recovering costs from multifamily and landlords are passing that on to renters, we're not making the low income multifamily subset of secondary customers' lives any better. So we want to balance the funding to prevent that, it sounds like. And people were intrigued and interested in this $4 to $5 starting point because of the amount of annual funding it could provide. And then also that it really feels like it's potentially fair to look at a way to sort of equitably spread costs. And June noted that if you did recover from more than just single family, then there's sort of a greater good of community, and maybe some of those industrial, commercial, institutional customers are sharing in sort of the well-being of the community. Did I miss anything, babe?
I think I heard from at least three of our members here, that the fixed approach made more sense to them because it would add the program stability aspect that they care about. And I want to make sure we don't miss that point if that's accurate.
Okay, let's make sure, because I may have misunderstood. Is anyone preferring the fixed approach, or are we preferring the combo approach? Fixed makes more sense. We have one for fixed makes more sense. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is interesting.
Jenna, we're getting ready to do the report out. We have just a few minutes left in our meeting tonight, so.
Okay, we're just confirming with our group which approach that they most favor, and we will be ready.
Nice work.
All right, we're gonna get started then.
If you're in our group, can you please add to the chat if you are in favor of the fix? Thank you, Jesse. Or if you're in favor of the combo.
Okay, Jenna, we're gonna go. Yeah, we'll start at the middle table. Okay. Oh, I had to bring your chart.
Well, that's okay. We'll be fast. We all voted for the combo approach of just putting it in total revenue requirement. So it would be allocated to both volume and fixed. And we had a good discussion, and I don't know that we had overwhelming like gumption towards one, but we ended up with sort of all customers maybe except the fire suppression accounts, which are just.
All right, thank you very much. Tom?
Yeah, we fixed on the fixed charges. We had a good discussion on the matter of the surveys that was done, and we felt that the willingness of individual customers to voluntarily add the $4 or $5 either every month or every other month was a good number. But we're also focused on the issue of that there had to be a policy that would support this fixed charge income, and in order for it to be accountable to individuals. We also talked about possible grants. Tom indicated there's federal subsidy discussion and then some industrial help from industry. So if I'm speaking enough for the three of us here, I think we're really focusing more on the fixed versus the other. Would that be?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, our group took a vote of sorts. In terms of who should pay, we leaning towards the majority of everyone. Although I have to say we have a strong vocal person for businesses in the non-single family homes in our groups. And so our discussion kind of moved towards predictability, transparency, and any sort of cost that we have. So we're leaning towards the fixed expense.
Okay.
Because since usage can vary so much of the year for everybody.
I see.
That way, at least I don't know, I think it'd be easier to explain what that costs.
Yeah, that came up in this group too, the variability that would be introduced with a volume only.
Right.
All right, Jenna?
All right, I've been designated chair on behalf of the group, and there was some split consensus in our remote participant group. So we had some folks who really liked the combination option, both because it had a conservation component and offered some program stability. Then we also had some curiosity around the fixed option as well. And then we also had someone who just really wanted to see or process a little more and see maybe some options presented that could help sway them. So that was a little bit of a tough question for our group. And then we also noted that there's interest in whether TVWD could seek additional funding sources. That $4 to $5 range was really intriguing. That $1 to $1.5 million starting point for funding program felt like there was real opportunity to serve people there, and that We also had a split on the specifics of who. Some of our group felt that if single family were the only group receiving, then they should be the primary group targeted for recovery, whereas others felt that it was sort of a greater good of community approach and for the sake of sharing and equity that all customers could contribute. But that either way, there's a concern about the multifamily customers and that the level of recovery wouldn't create a ripple effect that gets passed through multifamily landlords into low-income multifamily renters.
Thank you very much. Jenna, that sounds like a great discussion.
Yeah, we have a good group here.
Is there any public comment? We are out of time, but I want to make sure we offer it up if somebody had something they wanted to say.
We did have a chat comment from Benedict. Benedict, did you want to make a public comment to the larger group?
Well, we will put those chat comments into our record.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you, everybody. We're let's see. So again, this rich discussion tonight will continue at our next RAC meeting. So Paul and Jason, Tom and others have an assignment to take what they heard tonight and bring something back to you so you'll be able to see what a program that you guys discussed may look like and what levers you can pull to make adjustments to that. So I'm looking forward to that meeting with all of you. That is going to be January 17th, 2023 here. We hope you can join us again in person and online. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming and being with us tonight.